So if you're inside Tradovate, you're probably going to want to use bracket orders, and those are pretty easy to set up. But if you want to get towards something like auto break even or a trailing stop loss, or even worse, an auto break even into a trailing stop loss, you get to this chart here, and frankly, it's very, very confusing. And as somebody, I Googled, I looked, I spoke to them on the phone, I just couldn't figure it out. So in this video, I am going to give you hours worth of research and work and simply explain what this chart means, what the ticks mean, what the different triggers mean, stop loss, profit trigger, so that you can use this appropriately, especially if you're in a prop funding account that does not allow, has a trailing threshold. I think Apex uses a trailing threshold. You might want to use something like a trailing stop, or if you want to use runners and things like that, if you're using multiple like micro contracts and stuff, this ATM chart right here is pretty good. If you don't know what I'm talking about, it's right up here. Something else that you need to notice is that for every single index that you might use or any asset you use, you're going to need a different ATM for each one of those. So let's dive in and explain exactly what all of the parts on this chart really mean. I will kind of skip past all the stop loss and things like that. You need a name. It's going to be in ticks or dollar value. They don't do points. So you need to know the tick value of the asset that you're going to be trading. I like to use for just a standard bracket order, a take profit and a stop loss. If you're inside Apex, you need to be using bracket orders. And then your take profit and your stop loss, those can be set to ticks, whatever you want. But down here, they have different types of stop types. Maybe you just want a stop limit. Maybe you just don't want an auto break even, or you just want an auto break even. Those kind of make sense. But down here, this auto break even to trailing stop is the one that I want to use and the one that's really helped me be most successful. So I'm going to scroll down into that part where you set up the auto break even as well as the trailing stop and explain to you what each of these numbers mean. So like I said, you're not driving yourself freaking crazy. So the first part is the auto break even, and this will be the same regardless of the auto break even that you're using. We have to remember that everything here is going to be in ticks. So I use the NQ. So one tick on the NQ, we can look at that as being $5. But we also want to know that 4 ticks is a point, because I pretty much like to use points for everything. So I'm just going to use that conversion here. So when we see the profit trigger, what that means is that when I have an entry, let's say I'm going short. Okay, so this is a short. And right now, my standard stop loss is going to be somewhere up here, right? And my take profit is way down here. When the trade starts to go in my favor this way, right, it's going to start to work its way down. What this auto break even means is when it gets to a certain threshold that you get to set, this is the profit trigger. Okay, that's this right here. So what happens is for this 24, right, that for me is 6 points. So if this was a $100 entry, when it gets down to 94, what it's going to do is it's now going to move my stop loss to break even. Now this plus is a tick or two more. I like to go plus 1 tick just to cover commissions. You could put it at 0 and pay the commissions. It's really up to you. But when it gets to 94, it is going to move this stop loss right to break even. Okay, that's what the auto break even means. Now, what we have here next is an auto trail. Now, the confusing thing for me in the auto trail was I understood the profit trigger once again, but it was setting up the stop loss and getting the stop loss to move efficiently that I just could not understand. So here's exactly what all of these numbers mean. The stock continues to go down, and when it gets to a certain point, I want to lock in profit and I want to move my stop loss and lock in that profit. And as the stock continues to move down and down, I want my stop loss to continue to move in the increments that I set so that I can lock in profit, and so I don't get myself in a scenario where this thing gets really into the profit and then goes back against me and I get my account liquidated because of a trailing threshold. My next profit trigger is 40 ticks, or in this point, 10 points. So what happens when the price gets to 90? Okay, that is 10 points in the profit. It is going to now activate the movement of my stop loss. And I always thought, I couldn't figure out for the life of me, and even Tradovate and Ninja, they couldn't tell me in clear terms what this number really meant. And I figured out the fact that once this trigger activates, nothing else above it matters except for the take profit. And that made so much more sense. You must think of this as essentially its own trade with its own stop loss. So when it hit that trigger of 90, it doesn't move this stop loss in relation to anything that you did here. It doesn't do anything to what you did up there. It is now in relation to the trigger that you have. So if this now is our new trigger, that's our new profit trigger, we want the stop loss to be a certain amount of points or ticks behind that. That's where we want to move our new trailing stop loss. Okay, now for me, this isn't right, 10 points. When I get to 10 points, I want to lock in 5 points. So it's going to move it now from the break even to 20 ticks below this, or 5 points below this. This is my new trailing stop loss that is now going to move at the frequency that I want. Let's talk about frequency. The frequency is how often do you want to move this stop loss as the price continues to go in your favor. I like to say, okay, there is 10 points there, that's 2.5 points. So for every 2.5 points that this thing continues to go down, my stop loss is going to move 2.5 points. This gives it all of this area to play around with before it gets to that, to give you a little bit of breathing room. So every 2.5 or every 10 ticks, this is going to move 10 ticks in my favor. So if essentially I was at 5 points here, right, when it first got triggered, that means that when I get down 2.5 points, that stop loss is going to move half the distance. And then if it goes another 2.5, it's going to go half the distance. And it will do that all the way till I get to my initial take profit. So once again, what this says is that at 24 ticks, my stop will go to break even plus 1 tick to cover commission costs. The next thing, if you want this trailing stop, will be this number, what you'll set next. And this is how many ticks into profit you want to activate that trailing stop. Essentially, this is your new entry. Okay, and you think of that new entry when you're next going to plan this number. This is how many ticks behind that profit trigger you want the stop loss to start at. And then this is how often and how much that stop loss will move. I hope that makes sense. Let's go look at it on my chart so you can see it in real time. So to find this, guys, you're going to click this cog right here. You can add a new one. You're going to have to name it. It's in ticks. So mine, and that's why I didn't put this on here, because you have to scroll, and I couldn't make this smaller. So my take profit is set to 200 ticks. My stop loss is set to 40 ticks or 10 points. I then have my break even set at 6 points plus 1 to cover commissions. And then once I get to 10 points into profit, I want to lock in 5 points of that, or half of this. And then every 2.5 points, I want to lock in another $50 at a time. And it'll continue to do this until I hit my profit target. Any questions, guys, leave them in the comments below. I'll be sure to answer them. I hope this helped.